In the late 1950s, the world found itself in the midst of the Cold War, a period marked by intense competition and rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both superpowers were locked in a battle to prove their technological, military, and ideological dominance over the other. And one of the most significant arenas of this competition was space exploration. The space race, as it became known, wasn't just about technological superiority. It was a matter of pride, political influence, and the quest for global power. But before either nation could send humans into space, they needed to test whether it was even possible for living creatures to survive the journey beyond Earth's atmosphere. The Soviet Union, with their ambitious space program under the leadership of Sergei Korolev, was among the first to realize that sending animals into space could provide critical insights into the effects of space travel on living beings. Thus, the Soviets turned to an unlikely source stray dogs found on the streets of Moscow. These street dogs would become the first living beings to experience space, unknowingly taking on a monumental role in the history of space exploration. Their missions were often dangerous, and many didn't survive, but they were crucial in advancing the technological developments necessary for human spaceflight. These dogs would play a key role in opening the door to human space exploration. Their sacrifices often going unrecognized by the world at the time, but now remembered as essential to the success of future space missions. The question arises, why dogs? Why did the Soviet Union choose dogs over other animals, like monkeys or rabbits, for their space missions? The answer lies in a combination of practicality and science. For one, dogs were more manageable and easier to train than other animals. Their calm temperament made them ideal subjects for the confined and stressful environment of a spacecraft. Unlike monkeys, who might experience more anxiety or stress in such an environment, dogs were more accustomed to living in smaller spaces and could be trained to remain calm under pressure. Another crucial factor was size. The Soviet Union needed animals small enough to fit in the limited space aboard their spacecraft, and dogs, particularly smaller breeds, were the perfect size. Additionally, female dogs were often preferred for their resilience and smaller size. Most of the dogs selected for the program were strays picked up from the streets of Moscow. These stray dogs were ideal because they were often seen as more resilient and adaptable to harsh environments, traits that were highly valued in the demanding conditions of space travel. In addition to their temperament and size, the dogs were subjected to rigorous training. They wore specially designed spacesuits, spent long hours in small, confined spaces, and were exposed to loud noises and vibrations that mimicked the intense conditions of a rocket launch. This training prepared the dogs for the intense physical stress that comes with space travel, and though their missions were dangerous, the information gathered was essential for future human space flights. One of the most famous Soviet space dogs was Laika, a small, sweet-natured stray dog found on the streets of Moscow. In November of 1957, Laika was chosen to become the first living being to orbit Earth aboard the Soviet spacecraft Sputnik 2, just a month after the launch of Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite. Laika's mission was groundbreaking. She was not only the first living creature to leave Earth's atmosphere, but she also made history as the first being to orbit the planet. The mission was a test to see how a living creature would survive the effects of weightlessness and space travel. However, unlike many later missions, Laika's journey was designed as a one-way trip. The technology to return spacecraft safely from orbit was not yet developed, and, as a result, the Soviets knew from the start that Laika would not survive the mission. Initially, Soviet officials claimed that Laika remained alive in orbit for several days. But later, it was revealed that she tragically died just a few hours after launch due to overheating and stress. While Laika's story is heartbreaking, her mission was still an important step in proving that living organisms could survive space travel, even if only for a short period. Laika's sacrifice paved the way for future missions and is now remembered as one of the earliest and most poignant moments in the history of space exploration. Despite her tragic end, Laika's legacy is remembered as a symbol of the brave animals who took on dangerous missions to help humanity reach for the stars. Not all of the Soviet space dogs met such a tragic end. In 1960, two small dogs, Belka and Strelka, were selected for a mission aboard Sputnik 5. Their mission marked a significant milestone in Soviet space history because they became the first living beings to orbit Earth and return safely. Unlike Laika, who perished during her mission, Belka and Strelka successfully completed their journey and returned to Earth unharmed. Their flight lasted for one full orbit around the planet, and their safe return proved that living creatures could survive the intense conditions of space travel, including the stresses of launch, weightlessness, and re-entry. After their return, Belka and Strelka were hailed as heroes, and their successful mission provided valuable data that would be used in the planning of human space flights. Their success was a huge confidence booster for the Soviet space program and allowed the Soviets to move forward with their plans to send humans into space. In a remarkable twist, Strelka later gave birth to a litter of puppies, and one of these puppies was famously gifted to President John F. Kennedy by the Soviet Union as a gesture of goodwill. This symbolic gift demonstrated the potential for diplomacy and cooperation during the height of the Cold War and highlighted the role these dogs played not just in advancing space exploration, but in shaping international relations. While Laika, Belka, and Strelka are the most famous Soviet space dogs, they were far from the only ones to participate in the Soviet space program. Over the years, more than 50 dogs were sent into space, each playing a vital role in advancing the Soviet space program and laying the groundwork for human space exploration. Some of these dogs, like ZIB, were used for emergency missions or as replacements for other dogs who couldn't complete their missions. Zeb, for example, was a last-minute replacement for another dog, yet he successfully completed his mission without incident. Many of these dogs participated in multiple missions, gathering data on various aspects of space travel, such as the effects of weightlessness and the reliability of life support systems. Though many of these dogs didn't survive their missions, their contributions were critical to the success of later human space flights. Sadly, these dogs often did not receive the recognition they deserved during their lifetimes, and their stories were kept secret by the Soviet government for many years. However, today, many of these dogs are remembered as unsung pioneers in the history of space exploration. Statues, plaques, and memorials in Russia now honor their bravery, and their role in advancing space technology is recognized as crucial to the success of the human missions that followed. The legacy of the Soviet dog cosmonauts is both remarkable and often overlooked in mainstream history. These dogs were the first astronauts, paving the way for human space exploration and providing invaluable data that helped scientists understand how living beings respond to the extreme conditions of space. Without their sacrifices, it is difficult to imagine how the first manned space flights could have occurred. The information gathered from their missions helped shape spacecraft designs, life support systems, and astronaut training programs. Today, we remember these brave animals with memorials in Russia, including statues of Laika, Belka, and Strelka, which celebrate their contributions to space exploration. These dogs were not just test subjects. They were the pioneers who took the first steps into space, and their bravery deserves to be acknowledged and remembered. Their legacy lives on in every astronaut who has followed in their paw prints, and their sacrifices remind us that the journey to the stars was made possible by the courage of these animals who had no choice but to go. As humanity looks to the future of space exploration, we must remember the Soviet dog cosmonauts as the unsung heroes who made it all possible. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more history content.